The Battle of Barnet, fought on April 14, 1471, was one of the most significant and decisive engagements of the Wars of the Roses, or prolonged dynastic struggle between the rival houses of Lancaster and York for control of the English throne. The battle took place near the small market town of Barnet, about 10 miles north of London, and it marked the dramatic climax of the bitter rivalry between King Edward IV of York and his former ally, Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, who was known throughout England as the Kingmaker. This confrontation not only decided the fate of the English crown at that moment, but also symbolized the shifting loyalties, betrayals, and personal ambitions that characterized the entire conflict. The roots of the battle lay in the breakdown of the alliance between Edward IV and Warwick, an alliance that had originally brought the young Yorkist king to power a decade earlier. Warwick had been instrumental in deposing the Lancastrian king Henry VI in 1461, and for several years he effectively ruled England in Edward's name. However, their relationship deteriorated as Edward asserted his independence. The king's secret marriage in 1464 to Elizabeth Woodville, a commoner and widow of a Lancastrian knight, infuriated Warwick, who had been negotiating a political marriage for Edward to a French princess. The rise of the Woodville family at court undermined Warwick's influence, and his growing resentment led to open rebellion. Twice he attempted to overthrow Edward, and after his failure he fled to France, where he made a startling alliance with his old enemy, Queen Margaret of Anjou, the indomitable wife of Henry VI. With French support, Warwick invaded England in 1470, forced Edward to flee into exile in Burgundy, and restored the feeble Henry VI to the throne in what became known as the readeption of Henry VI. Edward, however, was not finished. With the financial and military support of Charles the Bold, Duke of Burgundy, he landed at Ravenspur in Yorkshire in March 1471, claiming initially that he only sought to recover his duchy. As he advanced southward, his forces grew as Yorkist supporters rallied to his banner. In a bold stroke, he entered London without opposition, regained custody of Henry VI, and proclaimed himself once again the rightful king. Learning that Warwick's army was assembling near Barnet to block his path north, Edward decided to strike before Warwick could unite with Lancastrian reinforcements led by Queen Margaret, who was landing on the south coast. On the evening of April 13th, the armies encamped on opposing ridges near Barnet, separated by a strip of misty countryside. Both sides numbered around 10,000 to 15,000 men, though exact figures are uncertain. During the night, a dense fog descended over the area, obscuring visibility to such a degree that neither side could see the other's positions clearly. This would prove disastrous the next morning. Before dawn on Easter Sunday, April 14th, the armies formed up for battle. Edward took command of the center, flanked by Lord Hastings on the right and his brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, on the left. Warwick commanded the Lancastrian center, with his brother John Neville, Marquis of Montague, on one wing, and the experienced John de Vere, Earl of Oxford, on the other. The battle opened at first light, with volleys of arrows, but because of the thick fog, both armies were misaligned, each extending beyond the other's flank. Oxford's wing successfully outflanked Hastings' troops on the Yorkist right, driving them back in confusion. Believing victory was at hand, Oxford's men pursued the fleeing enemy and began looting the Yorkist baggage train. When they attempted to rejoin the main battle through the fog, Warwick's soldiers mistook Oxford's returning men for Edward's forces because their badges, a star symbol, resembled Edward's emblem of the sunburst. Cries of treason broke out, panic spread, and discipline collapsed across much of the Lancastrian line. Edward IV, ever the bold commander, seized the opportunity with decisive energy. He rallied his men, led a ferocious counterattack in the center, and fought personally in the melee, his tall figure visible even in the mist. The battle turned into brutal hand-to-hand combat, with swords, poleaxes, and maces wielded in close quarters. As the fog muffled sight and sound, confusion reigned, and many units fought without knowing the fate of their comrades. Eventually, the Warwick army began to crumble under the pressure. Warwick and Montague tried desperately to restore order, but were overwhelmed by the retreating tide. As they attempted to flee the field, both brothers were caught and killed, reportedly struck down while trying to reach his horse to escape. The death of the Kingmaker ended one of the most dramatic careers in English political history. Once the most powerful nobleman in the realm, Warwick had risen and fallen by his own ambition. His defeat at Barnet shattered the Lancastrian cause in the south of England and restored Edward IV to uncontested power. The slain were buried hastily at the battlefield, and Warwick's body was later displayed in St. Paul's Cathedral to prove to the people that the mighty Earl was truly dead. The victory at Barnet was followed only weeks later by another decisive triumph for Edward at the Battle of Tewkesbury, where the remaining Lancastrian forces were annihilated and the young Prince Edward of Westminster, Henry VI's only son, was killed. Shortly afterwards, Henry VI himself was murdered in the Tower of London, ending the direct Lancastrian line. The Battle of Barnet thus marked a pivotal moment in English history. It destroyed the power of the great magnates who had once made and unmade kings, and secured Edward IV's reign for more than a decade, ushering in a period of relative stability before the wars flared once more under the generation of Richard III and Henry Tudor.